They had sold your oil for 50 years before they declared Oloibiri. All the story you hear about Oloibiri, false. This oil was used in the First World War, in the Second World War. Undeclared. It was property of the Nigeria was their colony, was their property. So you couldn't go quarreling with them for whatever they did. But in pretending that it was not so, clearing out the history books, I've had the misfortune of meeting with governors from the place and senators who did not know that this was the case. They believed Oloibiri with all their heart until I confronted them with the documents in our possession. And they went cold, ashamed, because they were gray-haired men who were supposed to be telling their grandchildren. They did not know. And this pretense, you remember Willings Commission, 1957-58? Willings Commission did not deal with only the Niger Delta. It was minorities. I'm going to bring out 3 things from there so that we can move on to how we landed on the constitution we have on the table now and what we could do to wriggle out of it, except we want to submit to be killed, because that's what is coming our way. If we don't do something to stop them, what they are doing right now is what ISIS set out to do with Syria and Iraq. ISIS operated from the flanks. They are operating from the government house of Nigeria. When you hear Danjuma come out to shout that it's ethnic cleansing, you think Danjuma was joking? Ethnic cleansing means so that there will be no future claim. They wipe you out, resettle their own people there. If you come in 2 years or 3 years, you won't believe anybody else was there before. Go and find out what has happened in Southern Kaduna. Not only do they dislocate and dislodge, eliminate and dislodge whole communities, they bring their own people from Mali. You remember when El Rufai talked about going to settle those who are killing his own people in 14 different countries? So, as you find these tiles on the ground here, these tiles you see, that's how they have mapped out Nigeria to the Atlantic waterfront. And they're taking it in. They are done with the green part, you see. They are in this purple belt, the one you call the middle belt. And the mission is to do away with them. Some of them have been renamed Emirates already. Is that not the case? Now, so that we can keep the trajectory, the next thing you find on that, when independence, was coming, and the independence didn't fall from the sky. The independence was where people from that southern part began to resist them, to say, look, you can't continue to govern us here. All of those who fought them, can you remember anybody from the north who was part of the fight? Enohoro, Mokugokoye, Awolowo, Osita Aguna, name them. They were all from the south. And these guys now, the British now decided to, independence, yes, you will get. But your situation will be worse than it was when we were here. And what they packaged as independence in 1960 was a bogus thing. Go back to the first map. Now, yes, wonderful. That's how I want it. You see this line here? This was northern Nigeria. This is southern Nigeria. Can you see the landmass? When independence was coming, they conducted a census. The whole of this place had 17% of Nigeria's population. 17%. The British, because of what they had in mind to create, a political structure that will make this one's permanent majority in all political decisions to be made in Nigeria, so that they can sit in Buckingham Palace and talk to Sokoto Palace and take whatever they want in Port Harcourt and Lagos without talking to any of you troublemakers. That's the whole purpose. And they've had it for 100 years plus. And we're still here swearing to defend and uphold the constitution they imposed that make us slave. When did Isaac Boro arise? Was it not 6 years down the road that they declared Niger Delta Republic from the same disputations that have now brought about Ment and the Avenger? Was it any different? They didn't keep that. The other part, who is from the Middle Belt here? The killings that are going on in the place. If you look at this north now, it hasn't changed. These boundaries you see here have not changed. That north that begins from here, this is about Gakem area to Meduguri and Sokoto there. The portion in green, these 12 states that passed Sharia the other day officially. The balance, the one in purple, was where Ahmadu Bello wanted Sharia for the northern region, going into independence. That's when the British go away. It will be Sharia for his region. The other people, Joseph Taka and all the ones from the Middle Belt, say, no, our people are not Muslims and we can't be part of one region if Sharia will be in place. They had to find common ground because they wanted a Middle Belt region. They fought and fought, they were being put down. The British settled it this way. They removed Sharia from the table and brought what they called penal code, so that those who are Christians can function freely, uninhibited in that. And that was the condition upon which the Middle Belt became part of northern region of Nigeria. Therefore, from the day in year 2000 that those 12 states, the portion in green in your map, from the day in year 2000 that those 12 states simultaneously imposed Sharia in their contiguous territory, they had moved away from that foundational agreement. They have seceded from the Union of Nigeria. They have seceded from the secular Federation of Nigeria. Having so seceded, they reinforce, they are now coming to overrun the rest of the place. And why do they have to resort to that? The constitutional instruments they put in place, including the one the British helped them to put in place since 1914 to 1922 to 1946. I'm sure you heard about Macpherson and Littleton, all the way to independence. That became 63, which collapsed in 66. I'm now landing in the one that is on the table, and what we must do, which if we don't do, we will pay in blood. If we don't do, we will pay in blood. It doesn't matter what the noise elsewhere is. When it came for the British to go, and they were asking those territories they had governed for over 70 years at the time, how do you guys continue when we go? They had governed them as 3 different countries. Nobody knew what they were doing in the north. Nobody knew what they were doing in the east or the west. Gradually, the meetings that began to bring them together started happening towards the 50s. By the time we came to 53, Enohoro moved the motion for independence because they thought they had come to where they could become independent. The northern delegates opposed it and defeated it. What was their reason? They said, oh, we cannot go from British colonialism, that we're backward. We're not yet in a position to compete with you. So if we go to independence now, the British will step away. You step into their shoes, then we remain where we are. When you can go your own. The British didn't tell anybody why they wanted the union to be. Remember that before then, Ahmadu Bello had cause to lament that this was the mistake of 1914, that Nigeria was a mistake of 1914. And not long after, Awolowo also had reason to say that this geographical expression. No, the ones who were building Nigeria did not believe in it up till that point. At what point did it now become something that has become non-negotiable, sacrosanct, indivisible? Because they've managed to impose, constitutional models away from what was agreed. Because by the time they were getting ready, they had to make themselves constitutions, as like you have Germany and France and Portugal going into European Union. All the negotiations of what they would do for themselves and what they will allow the European Union authorities to do for them. The federal government is supposed to be a union office for independent units. And that was how they came. Yes, that's how they came to where they became one country, to have accepted that level of autonomy. And it was Ahmadu Bello that made that demand. In all, by 1966, the 5 constitutions that defined the federation, the coup came, those constitutions were toppled. All those who are talking about restructuring and how it will happen, those constitutions that were toppled defined the Federation of Nigeria. From the moment they were toppled, the Federation of Nigeria ceased to be. The country was still in place. And a rogue federal government emerged. Elements who, wearing the garment of that Nigeria that had died, began to run riot, seizing the assets of all the federating units, which were contributing only 15% of their income, as they agreed to, for the upkeep of the center. The center didn't own anything. So we came from being a federation into this unitarism. And by the time they were going to hand over in 1979, they had found a way to also work out something that became a constitution that was not discussed. And it was that constitution that was not discussed, in which they had created all kinds of structures from the 4 regions they met that were on ground in 1966. We have now 36 states created by decree. So a new majority has emerged. Each of the states have 3 senators at the place. So, 704 local government areas, in which Kano alone has 44, and Lagos that had the same 20 local governments with them at the beginning is still keeping 20, whereas Kano had been broken into Kano and Jigawa. Between the two of them, they have 71 local government areas. What are they bringing to the treasury? Nothing. All the money Nigeria has to spend is between the oil money, the port money, and the VAT that is raised here. These people who bring nothing take 72% as of right in the place of sharing. And they're the ones who decide what other people will get, who they give more, who they give less. And in all of this, democracy, let me just refer to the documents you have in one of the documents you see where we try to define democracy, that we do not have a democracy because democracy is government of the people, by the people, for the people. In those three legs of definition, government of the people means that you, in exercise of your right to your sovereign right, decide the supreme laws of the land. The constitution we have on the table today did not come from that process, and so we have not decided whether we will live together or how we will live. The second leg is of the people, meaning that only your vote can send people to government house, and when they get to government house, they can only function according to that constitution you already made. Do we have that? The third leg, for the people, meaning that those who wield government powers must do so not only in accordance with what was put in place in the constitution, but for your benefit. The reason we don't have the things that should have been coming to you as citizens is that you have not written the script of what should happen. And so you have in this constitution provisions that exclude responsibility towards you. Section 6, subsection 6C of your constitution absolves government of all responsibilities towards you. They don't owe you any school, they don't owe you any hospital, they don't owe you anything. Anything they do, they are doing out of the milk of human kindness. That is one. You have appropriation provisions. Section 81, section 82 hands over the keys to the treasury to the president. Section 121, 122 hands over the keys to the treasury to the governors. So they don't owe you any obligation. They have the spare key to the treasury. They have immunity in section 308. At what point are you going to get anything from them? How did you come about that constitution? By imposition. And what all the cry and demand for repairing this place goes to is to say, let us accept we have departed from the foundation of being a federation. Because if we were a federation, Lagos Port would belong to Lagos, oil and gas of Niger Delta would belong to them. The middle belt, where killings are going on unabated, unchallenged, will have the right to defend themselves because they will have guns. The constitution has 68 items on the exclusive list, all written by decree, that make it impossible for the middle belt to touch any gun. You saw where the governors went crying, and the president said, go home and live in peace with your Fulani of Benin. If we do not remove that from that constitution, nothing will resolve that question. As it is for those killings, so it is for electricity. I cannot generate electricity because it's on the exclusive list. Lagos has 40 million people. It cannot generate electricity. Imagine the day comes that California cannot generate electricity and have to wait for Maine to come and give them electricity. They will leave the union. Imagine the day that Texas is no longer in control of its oil fields. Would they remain in the union for 24 hours? And it's supposed to be a federation. What is a federation? So we're in a fraud now in which the federation that collapsed is being sustained by brigandage, and they have imposed a constitution that we can no longer question. And anybody who says, what are you doing? What was Abiola's offense? Do you know why Abiola was killed? The servant does not rule over his master. So it's not only Jonathan that had to be chased away because he wasn't one of those who could preside. These same people are doing the killings in the middle belt, doing the killings in the east, doing the killings in the west. They are the ones who seized everybody's asset. They are the ones who imposed this constitution. And you join them to go to elections under that constitution. By what constitution would they govern? Anybody who wins in this election, by what constitution is he going to govern? You are reinforcing your enslavement. And if they kill you in the process, it's your ignorance that killed you. We've been going all over the place trying to tell people that this is what is the case. They are not listening. We went to the men of God in the land, without exception, quietly. Sir, here's the problem. If Desmond Tutu did not join Mandela in South Africa, would you not still be in apartheid now? Where are all men of God? If not for people like this who say, look, enough of this thing being said in quiet places. There's nothing I've said here that I've not said on national television. There's nothing I've said here that I've not said to the faces of those who have been governing Nigeria with this illicit decree. They are committing treason against the rest of us. They are committing treason against the rest of us because they put our signature on the document that sees our assets, that sees our lives. And we say, we have tolerated this document for 20 years, since 1999. We will not tolerate it any further. All of you, by the time they finish the election, less than 1,500 people will be sworn in as the ones who have won in the election. 180 million people are in danger. And they have managed to get you to come be on one side or the other. Put your mind the day after the election. The people who win will have to swear to defend and uphold your enslavement. The summary of what we're telling our people now is that processes had been undertaken. The majority, the whole of the South and the Middle Belt, have been told and shown what the problem is. That constitution must go down. Those who are going to contest under it are doing so for their intestines, not on your behalf, whatever they say. If you do not wake up and go to what will work for you, you are not only going to remain in your situation, they will come to where they turn up at your doorstep with their AK-47 on their mission to conquer. Let us leave it there.